I remember a time when I was very young, probably 5 or 6 or something like that. We had guests in our house. And I remember very vividly walking through the living room full of people that I didn't know well and smiling and being polite as I had been taught to be and just being appropriately normal. And I was on my way to the bathroom. I opened the bathroom door. I closed the bathroom door. I locked it. I looked into the bathroom to make absolutely certain that no one was in there. And then I remember shaking with some combination of, I didn't try to name it at the time, but it seemed like some combination of excitement and fear. But whatever it was, I had already learned that this was not something you showed in front of other people. By the time I was in my late teens, that reserve and that repression had gotten even more fixed and hard. And I was a very shut down young man. I was kind of brain smart, but emotionally stunted. And I remember when I got in my first real relationship with a woman, I think it was either late teens or early 20s, my first real committed, okay, this is a real relationship kind of relationship. All of a sudden, all these feelings that I had been pushing down and repressing and hiding and being careful to be appropriate, none of that worked anymore. And I could just tell, even if I couldn't put it into words, but I could just tell that I was not going to be able to be close to someone, intimate with someone, in love with someone, and keep everything so bottled up. And this was agonizing for me. And it showed up, one of the ways that it showed up was this intense jealousy that I could not explain, I could not talk away, I could not get rid of. And it was really clear to me, since she had had other relationships and I really hadn't, and I was very, very jealous of this, even though all the relationships were over, excuse me, there was this kind of crippling jealousy that I could not find my way around. Fortunately, I had a brother and a sister-in-law who were involved in a kind of peer counseling that they had been trying to get me involved in, and I had steadfastly resisted because my button-down self wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to show my feelings. I just wanted to keep them bottled up like I always had. But I could not do it anymore. And so finally, I reluctantly and shyly, but desperately went to them and said, I think I needed a session. So we sat down, and man, I just burst into tears, crying and snorting, and just stuff came out of me that I didn't know was in there. I didn't know where the hell it had come from, but finally there was this permission for it to come out. And I think the session was probably half an hour. And at the end of that time, I felt a relief like nothing I had ever felt in my life before. I was just shocked, and I could not believe how I had kept this all bottled up inside me. Shift forward many years to the present. My wife is new to this country. We've been married for a year, and she's making all kinds of adjustments. She has a new career here. She's working in a pretty high-stress environment with a lot of challenges. She's from another culture and working in a hospital with a whole different set of rules and a whole different set of professional standards and a whole different culture. And she's in a new relationship with me, a new marriage. It's still only the marriage. We've known each other for 6 years, but the marriage is only a year old. And there's all kinds of just changes and pressures and challenges of, navigating all the challenges of a new relationship. And she was getting more and more, everything. Being in a Vermont winter, she's from a warm climate, and being in a Vermont winter, everything was feeling alien to her and scary and threatening. And it was showing up as more and more challenges in our relationship. And we both had a day off a few weeks ago, and we just sat in our bedroom, and I said, just tell me about it. Just tell me what it is. Tell me what it feels like. Tell me, what are the challenges with me? What are the challenges with being in Vermont? And with that permission and with that space, she just began to talk about all kinds of things. And she immediately started to cry at all these pressures and all these pains and all these uncomfortable things that had built up inside her. And she cried and she cried and she just talked about this and talked what it was like to work at the hospital, about what it was like to face these unexpected challenges, being in a marriage with me, being in a whole new culture. And she just cried and she just let it express. And I just sat with her and just listened to her and just encouraged her. And I could just feel it was everything that she felt was completely understandable and natural, and it needed to come out and it needed to be accepted and it needed to express exactly how it felt. And at the end of probably an hour of this, she just felt so much better. There was so much relief and so many things that had felt almost impossible to her and just increasingly painful and difficult and tight and stressful were just released. And there was we have a very tender relationship, but there was a new tenderness and openness between us that had gotten very strained in the last few months. And I was just reminded how very, very simple this is, fundamentally. It can seem so complex and so twisted, but most of the complexity comes not from the feelings themselves, but from when we deny those feelings, when we push them down, when we try to make ourselves function over the top of them, ignoring them, avoiding them, barreling over the top of them, getting harder and harder, trying to talk our way out of them, whatever. And I was just reminded of how simple it is. When a young child falls down and hurts himself or experiences a pain of rejection in a friendship or whatever the injury is, if it's a healthy child and a healthy family, the first thing they'll do is go running to the person that they feel safest with. Mom, dad, an aunt, a grandmother, whoever it might be. And they'll start to cry and tell all about what happened and ask to be held and ask to be listened to and ask to be, not even by asking, just by their presence, just to be understood that this fluid, natural expression of emotion, when it is allowed to happen, happens, the feelings move through, and life returns to a kind of balance, to a kind of lightness. And there's so many things going on in our world, so much complexity, so much violence and political strife and unhappiness and depression. But I was just thinking as I was listening to my wife, just being reminded that all of us need and crave this simple attention, this simple attention to what it is we're feeling inside, this simple need to express what hurts, to let it move through us, to let it be a fluid process that runs its course. And then we can take the deep breath and move on. And my God, is this a lost art, or something we were never taught, or something we've forgotten, or whatever it is? But I've worked with clients in a variety of human service fields over the past few years, and I'll give one example of a close friend who had an episode of, there was drinking involved and a drinking problem and severe depression, and eventually got bad enough that he went to the emergency room because that was the way at the time that you were to access mental health services in our community. So he went to the emergency room and was actually admitted as an inpatient in the psych ward, which has since closed at Central Vermont Hospital. But that was the way mental health was done. And he was assigned a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, without really even listening to what was at the root of this depression, these feelings, prescribed medication. And my friend took the medication home, but didn't feel right about taking it, and had a conversation with me about some of the deeper feelings that were going on. And I don't know that we got to the root of it, but it was clear that this expensive, highly professionalized mental health so-called intervention had not even begun to touch the simple truth that this dear friend of mine needed to be heard, needed to express what was at the root of this depression, at the root of this alcoholism, to have a place where he could simply be listened to and heard as he expressed this. And that's not what this system offered. I don't want to oversimplify this, but in a way, it just does seem so simple. Whatever you are feeling, whatever is troubling you, whatever is gnawing at you, whatever is making you feel frustrated or depressed, there are reasons. You're not screwed up. You're not even mentally ill. You're just, and we are simply human beings living in a culture where this simple, natural, fluid expression of what we feel is bottled up, is repressed, is denied, is shamed, is laughed at, is hit, is whatever. There's nothing wrong with what we feel. There's nothing wrong with anything we feel. It's all simple emotion that's been repressed, simple energy that's being denied, that's not being allowed to express, to come forth, to be what it is, to sort itself out, to release in an environment or a relationship or a connection, even if it's a connection with yourself, where whatever is felt is allowed to be what it is. You take any homeless person on the street, you take any person who comes to a psychiatrist or a therapist, or children who are acting out in school, and we turn these into clinical problems. And maybe there are some things that are clinical problems, but I have had so many simple, profound experiences of allowing the feelings that are at the root of these things to come forward, to express, and to begin to unwind, to soften, to sort themselves out. Sometimes it's very dramatic, a deep, wrenching cry. Sometimes it's very simple, or very subtle, just allowing an anxiety that's been in me my whole life to simply be there, to not push it away, to not override it, to not smile over the top of it, to simply be there. If a fear wakes me up in the middle of the night, not to try to turn on my phone or distract myself or get away from it, but just to simply lie with it. There's so many so-called problems that we're trying to solve in our culture right now. How to save our democracy, how to deal with terrible dysfunctions in individual human beings and our culture as a whole. And again, I don't want to be overly simplistic, but I have seen so many times the profound healing value of simply allowing whatever emotion, whatever feeling, whatever energy is there, to be there, to express, not to express so that we can get rid of the damn thing, but simply to be accepted, to be expressed, to be there, to be allowed to move, to say how it feels. If it's sad, to be sad. If it's angry, to be angry. If it's frustrated, to be frustrated, to be depressed, whatever it is. Not to try to talk ourselves out of it, not to shame it, not to repress it, not to take drugs, legal or illegal, to avoid it, to keep it down, not to endlessly distract ourselves, to allow these things to come up, to allow this natural, fluid human process to run its course, to allow the softening to happen, to allow the healing to happen. If you do this with yourself, you do it with yourself. If you have a loved one or a therapist or a trusted relative that you can process this with, or a friend or a spouse or a partner or whatever, great. But whatever it is, to allow this simple, fluid, completely natural process to unfold and watch what happens when we trust in how our bodies and how life naturally can heal itself. Thank you for listening. All the tenderness to the world, in the world, to you, in this place, as whatever comes forward, comes forward. Whatever needs to express, will express. We don't need to go digging for it. It will come up as we make the space to listen, to allow, and to love. Thank you for listening.